I lived my entire life on the isolated island, just like everyone else. A lovely little island where everyone lived. I don't just mean everyone I know about, but everyone only lived on the isolated island or they didn't. Growing up on the island, we were told to never wander beyond the towers just off the shore. Giant stone lighthouses built onto the rocks about a kilometer away from the shore. During the day, the towers were dark, just a line of white stone pillars separating the gray sea from the gray sky. Inside the circle of the lighthouses, the isolated island had sunny skies, rainy days, and even on some nights there's a lonely, pale moon. Outside the circle of the lighthouses, there is only gray fog. The weather never changes, and the lights of the towers are not strong enough to ever break through the fog. No one ever comes from beyond the fog. No boats, no people, nothing. No creatures come from beyond the towers. No birds, no seals, no fish, no sea life of any kind. All the fish caught by our boats have to be within the limits of the towers. Not that there was much fish left to catch anymore. Nothing ever came in from the fog, and no one ever went beyond the fog, except for one day a year. Once a year, the tower keepers would take all of the children who turned 13 beyond the towers, and then they would return. The children were now adults and never spoke about what was beyond the towers with anyone younger than them. And today it was now my turn to go beyond the towers and into the fog. I was excited to go beyond the towers and into the ocean beyond. I had been on a boat before. I had gone fishing like most children my age. But unlike everyone else going to see the fog, I would be with a parent. My mother was a tower keeper, and even though I didn't see her very often, I looked forward to going with her. She only got a single day a month away from her tower, and she usually spent most of her time alone in her bedroom. But she would also read me stories, stories unlike anything I heard on the isolated island. She told me about places outside of the isolated island, places where there are more people than you could ever dream of, places where there were fantastic things and where people could live happily, with more places to explore and a horizon that never ends. That was something I always enjoyed dreaming about, going beyond the fog and finding new places and people, exploring and going to places outside of the isolated island, going elsewhere, meeting more than the 636 people that live on the island. But whenever I talk to anyone else, other than my mother or father, they all tell me the same thing. There's nowhere else. There's the island, there's the fog, and that's it. The kids make fun of me, and the adults just shush me. My mother tells me about those places, but my father actually lets me listen to them. Every night in the radio station, while music plays for the island, he tunes the radio and lets the other signals from beyond the fog play. Most of the signals are from people asking if there's others out there, but sometimes we hear people singing or telling their life stories. We also hear music beyond the fog, music unlike anything my father plays for everyone. When I ask my father why he doesn't share these messages or music with anyone else, he just tells me that isn't his role. Everyone on the island has a role of some kind. Most people are gardeners or they maintain the homes and roads of the island. The children learn to do the many roles of the island, each day going with someone else, learning how the job works. except for the tower keepers. And when we returned from our rite of passage, we chose our new roles for the island. My mother is one of the tower keepers, keeping the flame burning each night and watching the fog to make sure that nothing comes from beyond it. My father, on the other hand, works at the radio station in the middle of the island. There, he radios the towers with any necessary messages from the island. He plays music for the tower keepers and across the island, and of course, he shares the news with everyone. There usually isn't a lot of news, but still he insists every day on sharing some kind of news with everyone. He says it's good for making people feel united, though I think he does it because it lets him speak to my mother. On this day, there was finally some real news to share for the first time in a long time. Good morning, everyone. It is day 28,854, and it is Exploration Day, the day where every child who turned 13 this year is allowed to go out into the fog with the tower keepers and see what is beyond it. A day as solemn as it is hopeful. We all look forward to their return later tonight, and when they all choose their new roles on the isolated island. In other news, the mayor has reduced fish rations for the time being. He states it is temporary until the population of fish is at a more sustainable number. While he read that news, he rolled his eyes and I saw it. We haven't had fish in over a month now. There hasn't been any fish to catch at all in that time, so no one has been eating any kind of meat, no matter how much we missed it. So rations of fish cannot really be reduced any further. But as long as the mayor pretended that he was in control of the situation, then everyone else could pretend the situation was under control. It was easier on everyone to imagine the reason why no fish was on the table was because the fish needed time to repopulate, and eventually the days where the fish were piled high on the tables and everyone had plenty to eat would come again in the future. So they could deal with their hungry stomachs and their light plates, as long as they imagined it was temporary. My family already knew the truth a long time ago. There were no fish left in the ocean around the island. Even when I traveled along the shore, I couldn't see anything swimming in the water. Sure, there were a few crustaceans in the sand, usually hermit crabs, but just about everything else had been fished up or hunted to extinction. When I was a little girl, there were starfish, urchins, fish, seagulls, turtles, and even a few seals in the ocean. However, when the garden stopped producing as much, people had to rely on the sea more, and when the sea stopped producing, they had to harvest more from the gardens. And now we had only our gardens to eat from, and that was an inconvenient truth I didn't want to think about. After my father made his announcement, he walked me down to the shore where mother was waiting in a boat. They embraced and whispered for a moment before my father made his way back to the radio station, while I remained alone with my mother. At first, she refused to talk to me until we were far from the others at sea, and she finally relaxed as she spoke. You're going to learn a lot today out in the fog, but there's a lot more that the mayor and the other elders don't want you to know. It's been so long that almost everyone has forgotten the truth, and those that do know the truth find it too painful. I'm sure you know what that's like, she said, and I nodded. Everyone was ignoring all the cracks in the roads and in their own homes, cracks in the community, and the fact that we were all starving. I always figured people knew more about the fog than they were telling, but I never could figure out why. As we rode into the fog, my mother told me the history of the isolated island. No one knew how it happened or why, but we weren't always alone. Once we were a town that would get visitors every summer, and every winter the town would fish, and that was how money was made in town. We lived in a world without limits, with more people than there was sand on our beach. But one day, the entire world just vanished. The towers appeared, and there was fog beyond the towers. And it wasn't just the people that vanished either. The animals did as well. However, something was left behind. We traversed the fog as my mother explained what was left. We drifted through the thick gray, where I couldn't see the sky nor the sea. At that moment, I couldn't hear the ocean either. It was just my mother and her voice as she explained what she knew. The world outside of the isolated island is still there. The buildings are there, the signs, the stores, and everything inside of them. The world is eerie and it is haunting, but it's still out there. But even if it's empty of people, there's something still out there. We don't know why, but things move when we aren't interacting with them. Stores are still stocked with tons of food, books, and music. Anything we take regenerates overnight, but the roads change. The cities do too. We haven't traveled very far, but it does seem that plants grow just very slowly. But there's no animals out there. If elsewhere is full of food, why don't we bring some of it home with us? We could bring the food back with us. Surely that's better than starving to death, isn't it? I asked my mom, and she turned back to me with a tired face. A face so tired that I knew that she asked that same question before, many times, and she still didn't like the answer. The mayor and the council don't want to risk it. No one knows about what is out there or how the fog works, so they think all of the food is poisoned or cursed in some way. So they would rather starve than risk trying the food, she said as we continued into the silent waters of elsewhere. Elsewhere. I don't know where I got that name, but as we traveled through the fog, it just felt right to call this place that. It didn't make sense why it felt right, but in this foggy, empty place, it felt right to call it that name. There was no reason for it to be called elsewhere, let alone for me to know its name, but still, in my heart, I knew that this was elsewhere, and in a way I felt like I was going home. So it is better to starve to death for sure than to take the risk? I asked her, and she nodded. At least as far as everyone else on the island is concerned. As far as I know, no one else has even tried what is in the cans and bags. But I have. They're good to eat and completely safe. I could hear my mother cry quietly. Her tone turned a certain way when she was crying, but didn't want anyone else to hear it. I didn't say anything, but I kept it in my mind as I saw a shape in the distance get closer and closer. Why the rite of passage then? If we aren't supposed to take anything from elsewhere, why take all the children out here? I asked. You're supposed to be afraid. You're supposed to barely venture into the abyss and get so scared of it you feel like it gazes back into you. But that's not what it's like here. It's empty, but it's peaceful, she said as the boat reached the shore. The sand barely made a sound as we stepped on it, and we ventured into the fog. One of the first things we saw was a sign saying, "Welcome to Isle City." Reading was a very rare skill among the children. To the best of my knowledge, only my parents ever bothered to teach me, though some of the other children picked up a few words, usually for food. The road was smooth, untouched, uncracked. It barely resembles a road as I understood it. Roads back home were overgrown with trampled grass. The black asphalt was cracked and barely more than gravel, more of a suggestion than a solid path. But here and elsewhere, not even a single weed grew over the road, and no cracks were seen. "This is amazing," I said, as I felt the asphalt under my hand. I never imagined that asphalt could feel this smooth and cool to the touch. What wonders does elsewhere hold for us? "Come here, I have something I want to show you," my mother said as she guided us deeper into Isle City. We didn't travel far, only half a kilometer, before we made it to where she wanted to show me. A large stone building with a wide concrete stairway leading inside, with a single word on the building outside. Library. "What is a library?" I asked my mother, who shrugged. "It's a place where they keep a bunch of books. There's plenty for you to read, and anything you take off the shelves will go back when you leave it alone long enough." We went inside, and the inside was even more beautiful than the outside. There were rows upon rows of books. The warm yellow lights lit up every square meter of the building. Chairs were all leather and well taken care of. Nothing was worn down, and nothing looked broken. "Come on, let's find a good book for you," my mother said as we wandered down the aisles, and I could see her crying again as we looked for a book. I didn't know why she was crying, but after a while I found something that looked fascinating. The Explorer's Encyclopedia. I carried it over to a pair of chairs, and I sat in one while my mother sat in the other. As I read through the fascinating compendium of esoteric creatures, my mother continued her quiet crying. After an hour of reading, my mother finally spoke. "This is the last rite of passage. After this, no one is coming into the fog anymore," she said, and I looked up from my pages. "You mean they won't send any more children out here?" She shook her head. "No, there won't be any more children to send out here. The mayor and the council made a decision. Your father and I voted against them, but they made their decision." There was silence while I processed what she said. "Why? Why would anyone do that?" I asked, and she shook her head. "The mayor convinced them that these troubles are temporary, that if they give up their children now, they can be fed, and then they can have more children at a later time. They'd rather turn to cannibalism than risk the food from the fog." "What about the ones who come back today?" I pleaded with her, and she shook her head. "The final decision was that those who came back would be adults and allowed to eat the flesh of their younger siblings. But that will not last. There's no such thing as temporarily being a cannibal. Once you cross that line, you will always be a cannibal. We had to save at least you." She reached across to hold my hand as she cried. I'm I'm going back for your father, and we will all escape into the fog. We may not survive here, but I would rather run after a maybe success than a definite failure. I I need you to stay here. They won't find you here, and they'll never seek you out, she said, and before I had a chance to argue, she held her hand up and I stopped talking. I know you will be safe. If I don't make it, then you're safe. But if you come with me, then the odds of me returning are so much less. I need you to trust me. My daughter, my soul. Better that you live without fear than die afraid, she said as she embraced me one last time. I don't know how long we hugged, but I remember reading alone, finishing the Explorer's Encyclopedia, and moving on to another book, and another, and another. Time doesn't really pass in Elsewhere. I didn't grow tired, I didn't grow hungry nor thirsty, and things kept resetting. A book I left on the table with no intent of picking up again would just be back in its place when I left it alone. I didn't sleep unless I wanted to sleep, and when I did sleep, I had no way of knowing how long I slept. There were clocks on some of the walls, but when the sky didn't change, I had no way of knowing if I was asleep for hours, days, or even weeks. Sometimes I would leave the library to find something to eat. The businesses that served food always had fresh food there when I got there, even if there was no one there to cook anything. I still learned to cook simply because I could, and even though I had no idea why, sometimes I would leave the cooked food in a place where my heart told me to. The food would disappear when I went back. Even though my mother was gone for a long time, it barely felt like any time had passed. The only proof I had that she was gone for a long time was all of my memories of what I did, and there was no real proof that my memories were real. There were times when I would wander through the fog, and I would wonder if I ever lived, and if I was just always a wisp of fog in Elsewhere. But then there were times when I ran into the strangers. They were barely shades in the fog, but they were alive. They interacted with the environment, but they never noticed that I was there. But they would notice when I interacted with the objects. But when my golden eyes met theirs, then they would see me, even when the other strangers never saw me. These strangers would always ask the strangest things from me, such as for their daughter to disappear, or asking me to take care of them. Interacting with the strangers made me feel alive. When I was near them, the fog vanished and I could see how the world appeared to them, and they appeared as people to me. And every time I interacted with a stranger, my body would change. Sometimes I would be older, sometimes younger, sometimes I had no idea what age I was supposed to be. But after so many empty eternities with no one, it was a joy to interact with others, even if they were only shades and shadows. They were more real than me, but even rarer than the strangers were the others. Unlike the strangers, they weren't shades and shadows. They were solid, like me. They were as silent as the grave. However, I could see their golden eyes piercing the fog. Eyes golden, like mine. Seeing them made my heart hurt, my only pain in the fog. It felt like I was missing a part of myself, and when I saw them, they reminded me of what I was missing. When I tried to pursue them, they would vanish behind a corner, leaving only a mysterious whisper.
You're not ready yet.
I don't know what I should be ready for, but it isn't that bad in the fog of elsewhere. Things change slowly, if they change at all, and I am safe from danger. So why should I ever worry about leaving? And why should I care about the strangers or the others? Narrator's note. I received this note in one of my dead drops from my sources. From what research I am able to find, there was an island just off the coast of Isle City, known as the Isolated Island, due to its unique geography that only allowed a few safe passages to the shore. However, 79 years ago, the island just vanished, and most of its fishermen were out at sea. The island completely vanished geographically, along with the entire population. While many theories and stories exist surrounding this disappearance, nothing had any real evidence. Normally, I would disregard this note as another one of those theories. The fact that this dead drop is connected to the golden-eyed child makes me hesitant to disregard this claim.